Hey everybody, welcome to episode 31 already of my Musical Moments series. Today we are talking about 5 great examples of drunk classical music. So this is either the player is drunk or perhaps the character that the player is portraying is drunk. Just a way that they have worked this into the music. And stick around to the end, I give you 2 of the great examples from opera. Just between you and me, there's a lot of examples in opera. But I've chosen 2 of the best, so stick around for that. That's right, so today we're talking about 5 examples where composers worked into this idea of either a player or a character or somehow explaining with the orchestra an idea that someone's had maybe a little too much to drink, maybe they're fallen off the wagon, maybe they're inebriated, maybe they've tied one too many on, or as we say euphemistically, Brahms and Liszt. It rhymes with pissed, and in the UK you can hear people say that, wow, that guy was really Brahms and Liszt last night. It's true, learn about it. Check it out. The first example comes from the Western Suite by Elie Siegmeister. I'm actually doing a performance of this in an upcoming video, so more about that soon. But in the 4th movement, which is called Buckaroo, yes, based on that same Buckaroo that you know from Aaron Copland, a friend of his, they both studied with Boulanger. Check out my Boulanger video. It's really good. And gosh, that's a name that just keeps coming up. Check it out. Anyway, Siegmeister, he writes in his version of Buckaroo, here we have the cowboy coming home, maybe staggering home, and he is whistling the tune of Buffalo Skinners. But you know, then it becomes maybe a little more melancholy, and he starts to hum the tune of Lone Prairie. But you know, he just can't quite get it going. And then there's this really interesting combination in the score here, because the melody's in the trumpet, but then he kind of loses it, and when that happens, the clarinet kind of falls off in this weird kind of arpeggio fall off, and then the horn player hits a long note. And so, to me, it's the musical equivalent of, you know, you're humming along, and that's to me what it sounds like, that sort of, and that's written into the music. Here's another example. It happens twice in this piece. And then, not surprisingly, the classic drunk instrument has this little solo at the end where the trombone gives a little. So in that sort of the classic drunk character in this. Now our second example, we move to the music of, that's right, you guessed it, Beethoven. Wait, what? Beethoven wrote some drunk music? Yes, and I have 2 pieces that are theories as to why. The first comes from his 6th symphony, of course, the Pastoral Symphony. You may know that that's the first symphony that was ever written with a program, so really specific programmatic ideas about what each movement is about. This one, the 3rd movement, that's so-called Scherzo, he says, hey, this is a gathering of merry country folk. So there's kind of this folk dance. And in the first section here, the 2nd theme comes up in the oboe here in this lovely sort of jaunty tune. So that bass line there is the bassoon, but not the first bassoon, the 2nd bassoon, which already sort of calls attention to itself. And you hear this tune. And then he comes back just a few bars later. And that may sound rather academic and boring. But to me, I just imagine this guy in the corner. Everybody else is dancing, and this guy in the corner, he's had a little too much. So he's kind of relaxed, you know, and then he comes around and he hears his part come, oh, I gotta play, and he gives you that little boom, boom, boom. And then maybe he drifts off a little bit, has another drink, and he's like, oh my gosh, boom, boom. Then he realizes he has played 1 bar too early, so he repeats the C. Boom, oh no, boom. Now, that's maybe a little bit of a stretch, but gosh, I hear that every time we do it. It just sounds like an afterthought, like it's almost a mistake, and we certainly know that Beethoven is not above putting musical mistakes in his music on purpose to say, oh, no, I'm doing something that you're not supposed to do. I'm breaking the rules. Even there are stories about Beethoven players saying, well, I know what he means. He means me to do this. And he's like, no, you do what I wrote. I meant what I wrote, even though it sounds wrong. So I just think in there that's meant to be this idea of somebody like, he's just not quite with it enough to get it perfect every time, but he does rescue it at the last moment. Now for the next example, we stay with Beethoven yet again. This you may think is even more of a stretch. This comes from Beethoven's Fifth. That's the one. Everybody knows it. But in the second theme here, there's this lovely tune. Ah, yes. And you know, this came up because I was asking some friends. I said, I'm going to do this video about drunk classical music. And they said right away, second theme, Beethoven 5. And I was like, really? And they're like, yeah, sing it. And I was like, da 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 da. And they're like, right, sing it again, drunk. And once you do that, you'll never go back. So here it is in its original setting. It passes around between the different wind instruments. Ah, lovely, right? And then I asked a friend of mine, Colin, who's a trombonist, I said, hey, play this tune for me, but play it like a drunk guy. It actually turned out even better than I thought. And I was like, I'm fully convinced now. There's something about those little da 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 da, you know, kind of way leaning into those little upper neighbor figures. I will never hear it again the same way because of this experience. Now we move on next for our fourth example to the music of Ottorino Respighi. Everybody knows Fountains of Rome. Everybody knows Pines of Rome even more. But not everybody knows there's actually a third piece in what we call the Roman triptych, fountains, pines, and then Roman festivals is the last one of this. And this is a little bit lesser known, but no less spectacular. And in the fourth movement, this is the 12th night festival. So the 12th day of Christmas, the night before Epiphany begins. And in Rome, just a huge, huge celebration. And you can imagine kind of walking through this huge square where there are people dancing, all these different smells of this wonderful food, culture. So it's incredibly colorful clothing and people dressed up. And it's just like being at this wonderful, wonderful bazaar with all of this sort of activity. The best way I heard it described was kind of a kaleidoscope of cultures and sounds and smells and everything happening at once. And then all of a sudden, this guy walks by. And if that's not some drunk trombonist, I don't know, guy or girl, could be either. I'm an equal opportunity drunkard. But that person is clearly had too much to drink. And they're like, that was a great night playing that song over there. And I just feel like everybody kind of looks over like, what? Like that, and they're right back into their party. They're only delayed for like a split second. It just happens the one time. And I just love it. I think it's so much fun. Hoping to do that piece this fall, into fall of 2021, when we will be back. But super fun, and what a wonderful way to end that piece. It's got this over-the-top ending after that. But right before then, just a little sort of a little reminder in that, which I love so much. And now our final example, we move to the music of Brahms. And I know you think, oh my gosh, who's more serious than Brahms? He didn't write anything like that. You were wrong. Remember, Brahms was raised in a brothel, essentially, so was very, very comfortable in that environment. And he was offered an honorary doctorate several times. He kept turning them down. One, because he didn't want to travel overseas. He didn't like the idea of crossing the English Channel. But also, he thought all this pomp and was just ridiculous, and public notoriety he thought was stupid. But a friend of his was on the faculty or convinced him to accept this one from this one college. So he said, fine, I'll do it. And then they said, we're so happy you're doing it, Brahms. We can't wait to hear the symphony that you're going to write. And he's like, what? I'm not going to write a symphony just so you can give me an honorary doctorate. Like, I write symphonies for specific reasons, to make money or to be published or to forward my art, not to get some stupid honorary doctorate, which doesn't even mean anything to me. But again, his friend was like, oh no, you got to write something. So he said, all right. He went up to that university town, visited with some friends, hung out in the pubs there with some of the students. He actually really had a wonderful time hanging out with those students. And because of that, wrote a lot of music for men's chorus after this. But because of that, the piece that he turned in, the Academic Festival Overture. I've done this piece a lot. I love it. But what we might not appreciate in the English-speaking world, that at the premiere, everybody there knew that the melodies in this particular tune were all based on those student drinking songs, which to me, not at all what those administrators were expecting, and Brahms' way of giving them a giant, which I love. And it is said at the premiere, the students in the audience there, they stood up and sang full-throated with their own off-color lyrics to these songs, and it is said that Brahms just absolutely loved it. And I love it too, because I love the fact that music is this living, real thing reflecting real people. You know, it's not always wine and cheese. Sometimes it's beer and nachos. Which I love. Okay, as we wrap up today, I promised 2 quick examples from opera. The first, the melancholy drunk. You know, the guy's had too much to drink and he's deciding that the love that he has will never be requited. This was Nemorino from The Elixir of Love. And so after a few, he sings one of the greatest arias in the history of opera, Una furtiva lagrima here. So stunning, so beautiful. And you can check out a great performance of that right here. It's super short. And then the other example, the sort of effervescent, really happy drunk, if you will. This is the absolutely radiant Joan Sutherland. She is so spectacular, an incredible comic in this performance from Offenbach's La Pericole. Hilarious. This performance comes from Who's Afraid of Opera in 1972. It's worth checking out the whole thing. It's only 28 minutes and kind of gives you the gist of the whole opera. But her performance of this very, very short aria is timeless. She is spectacular in it. I hope that you will check it out. If you have not done so already, there is a like button below. I hope that you will click it. And there is a subscribe button below. I hope that you will click that as well. And most importantly, I hope that you will give me some of your suggestions. What is some of your favorite music by drunk people, drunk characters, etc.? It doesn't have to be limited to classical, but I look forward to hearing some of your favorites. Until then, stay healthy, and we will see you next week. Two of my favorite stories. Beethoven, on his deathbed, he had ordered an entire case of wine, and it arrived truly just as he's about to go, and his last words were apparently too late. Brahms, by comparison, he was a little bit luckier. His last act, it is said, was to take a sip of wine, and his last words, "That's quite tasty." What's going on out there?